You see it happening everywhere. Men who have everything society told them to chase: good jobs, healthy bodies, money in the bank, respect from others. Yet when marriage comes up, they run away like it's a trap about to close. These aren't broken men or guys who can't love. These are men who looked at the facts, did the math, and realized that what used to seem sacred now looks like a bad deal. Everyone knows the statistic. About half of marriages end in divorce. But that's the nice number people like to hear. It makes it sound like a coin flip. The real truth is worse. When you count couples who stay together just for the kids, the house, or because starting over at 50 feels impossible, the real failure rate is closer to 3 out of 4. Most marriages either fall apart completely or slowly die while people stay together. Dostoevsky wrote, "The best way to keep a prisoner locked up is to make sure he doesn't know he's in prison." Isn't that what happens to so many men stuck in empty marriages? Telling themselves they're free while the walls close in? Men today are starting to see this for what it is. They watch friends get destroyed in court, fathers turned into weekend visitors with their own kids, men paying for years just to see their children. They see their own fathers working until they dropped, not to live free, but to keep paying for families that left them. This isn't hatred of women. It's not that men can't commit. It's just recognizing that the risk is way too high compared to what you get back. Here's the crazy part though. About 9 out of 10 divorced people get married again within 5 years. Think about that. Men and women who just crawled out of emotional hell, lost money, had to split their kids between 2 homes, and they go right back to the same system that broke them. Why? Because they believed the biggest lie ever told: this time will be different. It never is. Each time, the breakup, the new marriage, the next breakup takes more. More of your soul, more of your money, more damage to the kids caught in the middle. From the time boys are young, society tells them that marriage is the goal, the proof that you're a real man. Mothers still ask when their sons will get married, like being single is a disease. Friends post wedding pictures like they just won the lottery. Movies always end with a wedding kiss, never showing what comes after. Nobody talks about what happens when it all falls apart. Men are finally asking the question nobody wants to hear. Maybe the problem isn't finding the right person. Maybe the problem is the whole system. Maybe marriage has become so dangerous and unfair that the smart choice is to just say no. Here's what men miss until it's too late. If the game is rigged so you lose, what does it matter how good you are at playing? This isn't being negative, it's waking up. Love feels amazing, but it can't change the legal and money problems underneath. Once you realize that, everything changes. The promises, the celebration, the honeymoon, it all looks like the opening act of a show, with a legal contract hiding behind the scenes. The pressure to go along with it is huge. Whole industries depend on it. Diamond companies, wedding planners, divorce lawyers, they all make money from this. Society says a man isn't complete until he gets married. But the men are breaking free from this spell. They're looking at marriage not through rose-colored glasses, but through the cold, hard facts of contract law. And when you strip away all the fantasy, what you see is a deal no smart person would ever sign. This understanding is spreading quietly but powerfully. You hear it in bar conversations, in the honest talk that happens late at night. You see it in the younger guy watching his older co-worker get destroyed by custody battles, quietly promising himself he'll never let that happen. The mask is coming off. The real question isn't why men don't want to get married anymore. The real question is why for so long they thought they had to. When you pull that thread, you find something darker and more troubling. Something about how society has shaped all of us since we were kids. Because marriage was never just about love. It never has been. It was always about something colder and harder. To understand this, you have to look past the flowers and music and see the numbers underneath. From childhood, you learned a story. Fairy tales said true love conquers everything. Kids' movies ended with a wedding. Everything in the culture connected marriage with success. Even now, people share engagement photos like they found buried treasure. Families keep asking, when are you getting married? Growing up, you were taught that marriage is the top of being an adult, that a man without a ring is incomplete. But what if that whole story is a lie? What if under all the music and smiles is something much older, much colder, much more about money? Historians will tell you for thousands of years, marriage wasn't about love. It was about money and business. It was about land, inheritance, and family alliances. The idea of marrying for love, of tying your life to someone because of a rush of chemicals, is shockingly new, barely 100 years old. A famous philosopher said, "Love is the state in which a man sees things most decidedly as they are not." Look at modern marriage through that lens, and you understand why people go in with stars in their eyes and wake up years later realizing they've given away their future. Strip away all the poetry from marriage, and it's just a contract, nothing more. And contracts need to be read carefully. But most men sign without reading the terms. They put half their stuff, half their income, and custody of their kids on the table, gambling it all on feelings that science shows don't last. Would you invest your money in something with a 75% chance of failing? Would you hand your business to someone who might lose interest tomorrow? Of course not. But men do exactly that when they marry without understanding the law and the money side. Here's the truth everybody avoids. Every relationship is an exchange of something. It's always been that way. Look at an older rich man with a younger woman. People whisper gold digger like they found out something corrupt. But both of them know what's happening. He brings money, stability, experience. She brings youth, beauty, energy. They each get what they want. There's more honesty in that than in a marriage where both people say, money doesn't matter while secretly keeping score of every bill. The real danger isn't the exchange. It's the blindness. A man lying to himself that she loves him just for who he is, ignoring the money situation. A woman telling herself that love will be enough, not noticing the resentment building over who pays for what. When you're honest about the exchange, at least you know what you're getting into. But when you hide money problems under romance, you're setting up for heartbreak. A wise thinker once said that love basically exists to make sure the human race continues. Once that biological drive fades, what's left is just negotiation. And most men aren't ready for that. This is why the gambling comparison makes so much sense. Men aren't just playing for affection. They're playing for their survival, but they're told not to look at what's at stake. They're told to have faith and close their eyes because real love requires belief. But belief doesn't work in contracts. In contracts, only the terms matter. That's why marriage often destroys men who have resources. Love is what gets you to the table, but the real hook is legal and financial. Look at how society talks about single men, selfish, immature, not grown up. But what nobody says is how often the married man is the one who's really incomplete, giving up his freedom and energy just to keep up appearances. Think about the co-worker who stopped traveling because his wife objected. Think about the friend who gave up career goals to avoid fights at home. These hidden costs, this wearing down of the spirit, never show up in statistics. Yet men are still pushed into marriage with promises that love will fix everything. But ask yourself, if marriage was really about love, why does the government have to be involved? Why do you need a legal document to prove your feelings? Why do lawyers and judges decide who gets the kids if it ends? If love was enough, why would any of this official stuff exist? The uncomfortable truth is that marriage was never really about love. It was about control, property, and obligation. It's only recently been sold as a love story, and men are starting to see through it. They understand now that feelings and money can't be separated. A happy ending doesn't protect you from court battles and splitting your stuff. Once that clicks, the next question becomes obvious. If marriage is just a contract dressed up with flowers and vows, why not write your own terms instead of letting the state make the rules? This is where most men get uncomfortable. The moment someone mentions a prenup, everything changes. People get tense, faces harden, the romance disappears, and suddenly love feels conditional. But this reaction shows exactly what the problem is. A prenup isn't planning for divorce any more than car insurance means you expect to crash. It's protection against something that statistics show happens too often. Pretending it won't happen doesn't protect you, it just makes the fall worse when it does. Think about how you handle other parts of life. You wear a seatbelt not because you expect to crash, but because crashes happen. You get home insurance not because you think your house will burn down, but because it could. Yet when it comes to marriage, something that fails more often than most investments, asking to be prepared gets you criticized. Why? Because talking about the risk ruins the fantasy and people hold on to fantasy. The truth is, a prenup is the most mature conversation a couple can have before committing for life. It's where you stop pretending and start dealing with reality. Yours, mine, and ours. What you bring in stays yours. What I bring in stays mine. What we build together is shared. Simple, honest, fair. But most couples would rather give everything to the courts than admit their relationship might not last forever. History shows us that when you ignore a contract's terms, those terms drag you through hell. An old philosopher said, fate leads the willing and drags the reluctant. That's what happens to men in family court. They never read the contract, never thought about the terms. When the day comes, they get dragged through alimony, custody fights, years of paying, all because they didn't prepare when love was blinding them. But here's the irony most people miss. Prenups don't kill love. They strengthen it. When you can leave whenever you want but choose to stay, that's real love. When you're not terrified of losing everything, every day together becomes a choice, not something you have to do. That's the difference between being caged and being free. A bird in a cage might sing, but the song doesn't mean anything. A bird that stays when the door is open, that bird is saying something real. Science backs up what men feel. That intense rush of new love fades in about 18 months to 4 years. After that, relationships aren't held together by chemicals anymore. They're held together by compatibility, honesty, and shared goals. Without agreements in place, what usually follows is anger, fights about money, and eventually the end. But a prenup forces couples to have conversations they usually put off until it's too late. What if one person stops working? What if one gets an inheritance? What if we fall out of love? These aren't negative questions. They're responsible questions. Real stories show how high the stakes are. Consider the businessman who built his company from nothing, then lost half of it in a divorce, forced to sell pieces and hand control to others just to pay what the court said he had to pay. Or the father who lost custody of his kids, allowed to see them only on certain weekends while still paying the mortgage on a house he doesn't live in. These aren't rare stories. They're the quiet reality for countless men. Men whose names nobody knows, but whose pain fills courtrooms in every city. Compare that to the rare men who insisted on being clear and honest. One guy got made fun of by his fiance's friends for asking for a prenup, but he did it anyway. Years later, when the marriage ended, they both walked away whole, their dignity intact, their money safe except for what they built together. There was sadness but not destruction. The agreement turned what could have been a war into an ending with respect. That's the point most people miss. A prenup doesn't protect you against love. It protects you against what love becomes when it goes through courts. It changes the relationship from something you have to do to something you choose to do. It means that even if the worst happens, you can walk away without being destroyed. But here's the sad part. Most men never even think about it. They let tears, shame, or accusations of mistrust stop them from speaking up. They sign their lives away in a fog of romance, never realizing that the one conversation they avoided could have saved them. And what about men who never make it to court? The ones trapped in dead marriages year after year? What happens to them when leaving means losing everything? Not every man ends up fighting in court. Many never file for divorce, but they're just as destroyed. These are the hidden victims, men who stay, because leaving would mean giving up everything they've worked for. They're the ones you see going through the motions every day, acting committed but feeling empty inside. They stay for the kids, the house, because starting over at 45 with half their stuff seems impossible. They're not husbands anymore. They're prisoners doing time. You can spot them if you pay attention. The guy who works late every night, not because he loves his job, but because the office feels safer than his own home. The one who drinks too much, not because he's weak, but because it takes the edge off being in a loveless situation. The man on antidepressants, not because something's wrong with his brain, but because he's trapped in an arrangement that would depress anyone. They wanted intimacy and got obligation instead. They wanted partnership and got servitude. Society, blind to their quiet suffering, calls them responsible men. Here's the cruel irony. These men don't show up in divorce statistics.
On paper, they're success stories.
Their marriages are still intact. They're held up as examples of stability. But underneath, their dreams are gone, their spirit is crushed, and their lives are just about getting through each day. Their pain isn't just their own, it affects their kids too.
Kids learn about love from what they see, not what they're told.
When the place that's supposed to be safe becomes a prison, that pain gets passed down to the next generation. So what good does marriage do today compared to what it costs? Long ago, marriage had real benefits. Social respect, better career chances, legitimacy for kids, regular companionship. These days, you can get all of those things without marriage. Society doesn't look down on single men anymore. Employers can't discriminate against unmarried guys. You can have intimate relationships outside of marriage and household support. Most modern marriages have both people working and exhausted anyway. What's left? Love? And love doesn't need a government document to exist. That's why the idea that men are afraid of commitment doesn't make sense. Men are still committing. They're still loving, still building relationships, still raising kids. They're just refusing to sign a contract that turns love into a liability. They're not running from responsibility. They're running from a bad deal. That difference is important. It's the difference between being a coward and being smart. Of course, when men make this choice, society attacks them with shame.
They get called bitter, hateful, broken.
But look at who's walking away. Not just divorced guys who got hurt, but successful single men, guys with great careers, men building wealth, men living free.
They're not broken.
They're rational. They read the fine print and decided not to sign. And here's what few people will say out loud. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed to work. Divorce courts, custody battles, lawyer bills, these aren't mistakes.
They're money-making operations.
The longer the conflict, the more money gets made. Judges, lawyers, therapists, real estate agents, they all profit from broken marriages. Every court hearing, every property split, every forced therapy session means money for someone else. The family court system isn't trying to be fair. It's a machine designed to take money, and men are what it takes money from. So when men refuse to get married, it's not rebellion against women. It's self-defense against an institution that profits from destroying men. They're choosing reality over illusion. They're choosing freedom over being trapped. And they're redefining what strength means, not as blindly sacrificing yourself, but as having the courage to say no to an unfair game. Marriage today asks too much and gives too little. It pressures men to risk their future, their freedom, their kids on odds that no reasonable businessman would accept. Until that changes, until the contract becomes fair, men will keep walking away. Maybe that's not a crisis.
Maybe it's progress.
Maybe it's the moment when men finally understand that their worth isn't measured by whether they sign a piece of paper, but by their ability to live honestly with dignity
and free. If what you're hearing resonates,
if it puts words to something you felt but never said, understand this. You're not alone. Men everywhere are beginning to see what you see. Share this with others who need to hear it. Think about the man silently suffering in a home he doesn't recognize, or the young man about to blindly sign a contract he doesn't understand. Let him hear this before it's too late. Love will survive without paperwork. Commitment will survive without a judge. What can't survive is willful ignorance. The game has changed. The dangers are real.
And men have noticed.
The only question now is, will you face this truth today, or will you wait until you're standing in front of a judge?